So my name is Tessa. I'm part-time staff with CTF, our teen ministry here. And I felt like I had so many things to address right off the bat. One, my first Sunday sermon, so bear with me. I'm so nervous. Sorry that you guys are the guinea pigs for my first sermon, but I normally give sermons to our teens and our middle schoolers, so maybe it'll be shorter. Maybe it'll work out in your favor. And oh my gosh, this might be bad news. Is Amanda Petuna here? Oh no, okay. I was told if I got nervous, she was the best face to find in the crowd. So I love that for me. Another thing I needed to address was Matt C., when he gave his sermon, threw out some allegations, called me spiritually Jewish. I like the Old Testament. I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry, actually. And then the last one, I am very scared to admit this out loud because I get so much backlash for it, but I actually do not really like Christmas. I know, and I'm giving an Advent sermon. Take it up with Bree, please. Anyways, so now that the air is cleared, we know that I am not Jewish and that I hate Christmas. I wanted to start with a story. And so this story might seem like a little bit in the beginning of a Debbie Downer for an Advent sermon, but I promise it gets better. Just like God does with things, right? He can turn any Debbie Downer into something beautiful. Matt C. talked about longing, Bree talked about light, William talked about presence, and so that left me with promise. And the more and more I thought about promise, the more and more I thought about this story from when me and Matt were dating. And if you've heard me give sermons at CTF, you've heard this story before. I'm repeating it again, sorry, not sorry. But so me and Matt were dating at the time, and we were just like chit-chatting, having a normal conversation, just hanging out. And at some point, he pauses, and he turns and looks at me, and he was like, hey, you know I would never hit you, right? And I was like, kind of blank face, looking at him. He's like, no, really, like I will never yell at you. I will never cuss at you. And so I was like, okay. And in my head, I was like, yeah, sure thing, bud. Like, well, I'll believe that when I see it. It was just one of those moments, like, he's looking at me, like, what is she thinking? I'm looking at him, like, what is he thinking? And he just kept insisting, and I just kept being like, okay, sure, but what are you, I don't know why you're promising me that. You've just never been mad enough. You'll do those things eventually. So you can imagine how well that went over. But in my world, in that moment, I was just thinking, I'm not an idiot. I know when something's too good to be true. And in my world, promises like that were too good to be true. They were too quickly made and too quickly broken. That's just what had been reinforced to me over and over just from the world, from my family, from my dating relationships. It had shown me that that's what love was. Love wasn't this gentle and self-controlled thing, this life-giving thing. It was self-centered. It meant putting up with any behavior or decision from the other person, no matter what it was. It was feelings-based. That's all I'd ever known. So, I don't know why I kept thinking of that story, but I just kept thinking about it, and I think that's what God's promises are to us. They're hard to believe because they really are too good to be true. They are so good and so impossible. It's just better than we ever could have dreamed of, much less thought of asking for. I would have never asked Matt for that promise. I would have never even thought it was possible. But that's what God's promises are like. So what are these promises? I'm going to read a list, so feel free to close your eyes if you want. You don't have to. But these promises, God promises to give us strength and wisdom. He promises to give us peace and comfort. He promises to give us direction and courage. He promises to always be with us, to never leave or abandon us. He promises to love us no matter how far or how long we've run from him. He promises that no matter how bad we've messed up, he will pay the price. He's promised that no matter how much shame we carry, he will wipe our slate clean. He promises to make us whole again. He promises us a future with him where there will be no more tears, no more death, no more mourning or crying. The Bible is filled with these kinds of promises that are too good and too impossible to be true. So if you've been a believer for a while now, don't grow numb to that fact, that these are too good and are impossible in any other form or fashion or way. They should leave you in awe that he sees you, that he is powerful enough to do something about it, and that he cares enough about you to do something about it. So maybe you're not numb to this. You're like, yeah, I know this, and I'm trying to believe this, but I am struggling. It's really hard for me to see that these things are true. To that I have to say, you're not alone. Ask John for a time he struggled to believe God was good. Ask Bree for a time she thought God wasn't going to pull through. Ask Joy. Ask Lindsay Berger. Ask the people around you. That's what community is, and that's what community does. Is when we're struggling, we can lean on one another, and we're going to point each other to God. My other advice is try to remember. This is what I tell myself when I'm struggling to believe God's promises. I just try to remember everything he's pulled me through before. I try to remember every time he's healed me and I didn't think it was possible. Every time he's given me something that I didn't think was possible. Focusing on our past promises that God has delivered on can help assure us he will do so again. And that's what the Bible shows us, that he will do it again and again and again. So maybe you're new to your faith. You don't even know if you've bought into all of this yet, or you're questioning your faith, or you're, undecided. Into that, I have to say that's where I was. And I didn't believe these promises either. They were too good to be true. But I eventually came to a point where I was just so burdened and heavy that I just thought, what do I have to lose by believing in these things? And I'm just going to try it out. I'm just going to believe in them, and I'm just going to see if they're true and if this is what I want to do. And here I am. God's never let me down. The longer I've followed God, the more time I've spent with him in prayer, the more time I've watched his people to see what they do, the more time I've, spent in prayer, I can't help but believe his word and that what he says is true. He really is that consistent. I had never seen that or anything close to that. Matt is great. He's super consistent and reliable, but that's not inherently him. He was shown that by his parents who love and worship and serve God. They were shown that from someone else. All the best parts of us come from God. He is just that good, that impossible, that faithful, that loving and just and sovereign. I just don't know. I gave the example of, it's a little bit like an iceberg, when you see those pictures and you see like the little tip above the ice, and then under the water level, you see like the whole iceberg, and it's like way a million times bigger than you thought. And I thought about that example, for that's what God's promises and love is like. We see this little tip of the iceberg and we're blown away. Is he really that good? Does he really care that much? And it's just, as time goes on, you're like, oh my gosh. And it's just like I'm continuously blown away by it so much bigger and better than I thought. There's just so much more depth and richness than we could have ever imagined. And so, I think of that iceberg and how it just keeps getting bigger and better than I thought. And I just can imagine God in heaven kind of probably laughing to himself, laughing at me, and being like, just wait. If you think this is big, wait till you see the next thing. and the next thing and the next thing, and then just wait till we're in eternity together. You're going to be blown away if you think this is a big deal. So I can't help but worship. I can't help but feel humbled and in awe. How can we not dedicate our lives to that and follow with God? That's what he's all about. So, yeah, I hate Christmas. So this isn't a Christmas sermon. This isn't Christmas trees and stockings and, jingle bells and buying Christmas gifts. This was a baby born to a low-class, scandalized couple in a mingy barn with stinky animals and scratchy hay. This was a way that God could be with and ultimately save an entire population of people whom were not even close to being worthy or deserving. That is too good to be true. This is God's promise. This is the best gift ever given, now fulfilled. This is God's promise fulfilled in the most unexpected, lowly, and sacrificial way imaginable. This is John 3:16. This is God loving us so much that he gave us his one and only Son so that we could have a chance to get to know him and spend forever with him. This is the best promise ever made. He gave up everything to make that promise to us. And if you don't think he gave up everything, ask a parent in this room to give up their child on your behalf. They're not going to do that for you. Much less ask them to give up their child to be beaten and mocked and die in a humiliating death. This is too good to be true. He gave up everything, not so we could come here on Sundays, not so we could wear a cross necklace or put a Bible verse, get it tattooed or on a bio or on a plaque on the wall. He gave up everything so we could know something different, so we could be transformed, so we could know radical, unending, and never-changing love. Not this watered-down version of love that the world gives us, but deep and changing love. And not just love, but joy and peace and patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. That is too good to be true. He came so we could have life, so we could shed that hollow, empty version of ourselves that we had before, and step into something richer and fuller. This is more than a promise of a promotion or a increase in money or beauty or health or an easy life. This is so much more than that. I found out later that Matt was pretty hurt when he realized I didn't believe him, that he would never do those things or say those things. And I was kind of in disbelief, but he was in disbelief. He was really hurt. He thought that it made me question how I saw him or how I viewed him. And so he eventually, he went to his community. He asked some people. He explained why he was hurt, and they said, yeah. They explained that she's just never seen anything different. Give her time. God gives us time. He knows we're not going to be right on board immediately. He knows we're not going to change immediately. He knows we need time to believe that he really is that good. So my question for you is, which one of God's promises is hard for you to believe? Do you believe that he can really provide everything you need? Do you believe he really can forgive everything that you've ever done? Do you really believe in these promises? That one day you'll get to spend forever with him? That he really loves you? And the kind of follow-up question to that is, what does this say about your view of God? And I don't say that to be like, oh, shame on you, you shouldn't doubt God. I'm saying this because it points to a deeper issue. My issue was that I thought God was small. I put him in a box. He can't do that. That's too crazy. That's too big. That's too out there. So what is your root issue of why you're struggling to believe that promise? Do you not believe God is just? Do you not believe he is powerful and in control? Do you not believe that he has unlimited grace? We can't paint unto God the nicks and dings and pains the world has given to us. God's not like that. He is good, he is faithful, and he always makes good on his promises. I asked William to sing that song, Promises, because as I was writing this, it summed up basically everything I wanted to say. God of Abraham, you're the God of covenant, of faithful promises. Time and time again, you have proven you will do just what you said. If your hope is in this world, it'll let you down time and time again. Matt hasn't broken that promise yet, but that's not to say he never will. He's human and imperfect, just like the rest of us. But God is perfect. He doesn't break his promises. Our hope cannot be in this world, or we'll be let down. It can't be in our jobs or our relationships or our marriages or our finances. And this is my last comment, so if worship team wants to come up. I think that was pretty short. Sorry about that. Was just an encouragement for our young people. I felt so intimidated coming up here to preach to a room of people older than me, more Bible educated, I don't know, than me. And and I don't like speaking in general, much less given that fact. And I don't really like Christmas, so I just felt so intimidated. And I just kept thinking of that verse from Timothy that don't let them intimidate you because you're young. I come up here and speak because I think it's important. What God's done for me, I don't just want it to end with me. It needs to be shouted from the mountains, from the podium. It needs to be shouted from your school desks, from your basketball benches. It's too good. It's too good to be true. I do it so that you guys see that you can do it too. So thank you guys for being part of my first Sunday sermon. And I'm glad that it can be short and sweet for you guys. Merry Christmas.